Don't be fooled by Mark Carney's speech. He is fundamentally confused, and I want to tell you why. Welcome to Concepts. My name is Shawn Whatley. I couldn't resist recording a short video about Mark Carney's fabulous speech just the other day at the World Economic Forum in Davos. People around the world are gushing about how eloquent it was, and it was eloquent. I want to make 3 comments about the speech. Number 1, with a look at foreign policy. Number 2, look at the content of the speech itself. And number 3, I want to unpack what I think is a fundamental confusion within the speech. So number 1, foreign policy. Remember in June, Mark Carney was at the G7, Kananaskis, Alberta. Canada hosted the G7 summit, and he was virtually gushing over President Trump. At a few points, he was reaching out and saying, what a transformational leader you have been. All of his elbows up were down, firmly down. He was literally, I've never seen someone being so full of flattery for President Trump, and even Trump himself couldn't resist smiling at how obsequious Prime Minister Carney was being to him. Jump ahead to just last week. Now we see Prime Minister Mark Carney striking a deal, a strategic partnership with President Xi Jinping of Communist China. China is the sworn enemy of the United States right now. We live beside the United States, the largest superpower in the world. And here we are, our leader, striking a deal with Communist China. It doesn't make sense to me. And then just a few days ahead of the Xi Jinping deal, we see Mark Carney giving a beautiful speech at the World Economic Forum. In each case, Kananaskis, the G7, Xi Jinping smiles and handshakes with the communist leader. And then at the World Economic Forum, it seems to me that Mark Carney cares most about whoever is in the room. He is a sycophantic leader. A sycophant is someone who just uses flattery and praise to make themselves look good and to get what they want, to benefit themselves. And I can say this with confidence because I have suffered from the same problem my whole life, people pleasing. You can't have a people pleaser as a leader. A leader needs to have courage to say things that other leaders won't like. And yet we see Carney when he's with Trump, he's gushing over Trump. When he's with Xi Jinping, he's gushing over Xi Jinping. When he's with the Davos crowd, he's making them all look good. This is a fundamental concern for me. In fairness, it's better than having a narcissistic leader, and we've had that recently, and also not a very smart one. Carney is, I think, probably a lot more intelligent than our previous prime minister, but you can't be a sycophant and be a true leader. So let's get into the speech itself. Whoever wrote the speech was a great speechwriter, very eloquent, starting with a quote from Thucydides from the Peloponnesian Wars, right? The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. Great quote. It really makes me wonder, though, does Mark Carney even know about ancient Greek philosophy? I'm sure he does. He's probably got a great education. Was he classically educated? But does he actually care about the ideas in the ancient Greek world? Does he study those ideas? Does he figure out how to apply those ideas to today? Or does he just pick a beautiful sounding quote that's going to sound very eloquent in a speech? I'm leaning towards the latter, but I hope I'm wrong. But what really bothered me is when he appropriates a comment, a story from Havel. He uses the greengrocer story. And the story goes that the greengrocer puts a sign out in front of his store every day saying, "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it, but he knows he has to do that to stay out of trouble. So this is an anti-communist book written during communist occupation that our prime minister uses to support the content of his speech. It gives us the impression that our prime minister is an opponent to oppressive communist rule. And I'm really wondering, is that the case? Yeah, he probably is an opponent to tyrannical rule and oppression, but is he fundamentally opposed to communism on principle? And we're going to get to that in our final comments about fundamental confusion. But also in the speech, he says that the international rules-based order has ended. There's been a rupture, not a transition. And he seems to be bemoaning the fact of this beautiful globalist pursuit of universal liberalism has ended. Well, the only reason we had a universal international rules-based order was because of American leadership. And this is a comment made by Carson Jarema in a tweet on X just the other day. He said, this only existed because the Americans held it in place. And if the Americans aren't willing to be the global policemen that they have since World War II, how can we expect a rules-based order to continue? And yet Mark Carney seems to be thinking that this rules-based order was based on reason, and it's just the way we should be, and the middle powers of the world need to unite. And it's, again, what do I know about foreign policy? But it seems to be a backwards way of trying to influence the superpower that we live beside. This leads to my third comment about fundamental confusion. So Mark Carney, when he appeals to an international rules-based order, is really reflecting the inner thought of the Enlightenment. So to oversimplify and just to make it very brief, the Enlightenment, approximately anyways, we could talk about multiple enlightenments, but in general, we think of the Enlightenment as the growth of reason, science, and progress. Reason existed before the Enlightenment, of course, but reason became our primary way of knowing things, and that generally was worked out through science. Now, we're not going to have a debate about the good parts and the bad parts of the Enlightenment, but simply to say that Enlightenment thinking embodies most of the ways our leaders think now, both liberals and conservatives. So the Enlightenment was a move away from tyrannical kingship and religious intolerance and towards a focus on reason, science, progress. And John Gray puts it this way. I have to read, it's a very short quote from his book, 1995. It's called Enlightenment's Wake. And he puts it this way, quote, "The core project of the Enlightenment was the construction of a critical morality, rationally binding on all human beings, and, as a corollary, the creation of a universal civilization." We're going to unpack what he means there. He continues, "This is the project that animated Marxism and liberalism." Marxism and liberalism in all their varieties, which underpins both the new liberalism, he's referring to the neoliberalism of the 1990s and the 1980s, emphasis on market thinking, underpins both the new liberalism and neoconservatism. Again, this was popular in the 80s and 90s. It's still around today, although most people don't like to use the term. And to which every significant body of opinion in the United States continues to subscribe, end quote. And I would say every significant body in Canada, and certainly every significant body represented by the folks at the World Economic Forum, including the World Economic Forum itself. So the idea that we get from the Enlightenment is using reason, we can come up with ideas that are true not just for a particular area, but they're true all around the world. And this reflects a lot of the ideas that came out of Christian teaching as well, and certainly from the ancient Greeks as well. Certain truths are true everywhere. For example, human dignity, that's something that we can say is true everywhere, all the time, in all places. But when we apply this idea of universalism to a political context, we end up with what I think is a bad situation. We end up with people wanting to bomb Iraq, set up elections, and expect that the free market will bloom. That won't happen. You can't ignore the local community and thinking and tradition and cultures and heritage, patterns, habits, norms of the people in that particular area. Liberalism doesn't see it that way. Liberalism sees itself as a universal political philosophy that applies everywhere. Communism, Marxism, international socialism is exactly the same. They are siblings of the Enlightenment project. They both are in pursuit of a universal human civilization. So Alistair McIntyre put it this way. He said, the Enlightenment project is about refounding morality and society on universal, tradition-independent, rational principles. So this is Mark Carney to a T. This is all the people at Davos. They're all thinking and breathing this same substance. Now, the only difference then between liberalism and Marxism is how it was applied at the local level or how it was applied politically. Classical liberals, the old-fashioned liberals, used to say that we're going to take the fundamental principles of the Enlightenment, reason, science, progress, and we are going to emphasize the individual, free markets, and a limited government. So that's the old-fashioned, Enlightenment-informed classical liberalism. Marxism also took the Enlightenment principles, reason, science, progress, and applied them to the collective, to a centrally controlled or a centrally planned economy, and a large government. Marx would argue that we need a big, strong government to get done this rational transformation to create a universal civilization. So it was more muscular. And the communists would argue that they were being more honest about their fundamental principles. If they have to be tyrannical now and then to be true to their principles, then so be it. And this is why liberals, especially 20th century liberals, found it so hard to debate against the communists. They were siblings of the Enlightenment project. And this is what frustrates me in Mark Carney's speech. For him to appeal to an anti-communist author from Czechoslovakia about communist oppression and how we just need to stop living by lies and we need to stop putting the sign out in front of the grocery store. He's appropriating for himself that anti-communist stance. And yet his core principles, his Enlightenment-based thinking is exactly the same principles that we find in the communist oppression that was oppressing the grocer in the first place. So just to recap, foreign policy, it doesn't make sense to me. What do I know? What do you know? We're not foreign policy experts, but it doesn't seem wise to be a sycophant and really to be a people pleaser, to suck up to Trump at Kananaskis, to strike a deal with Xi Jinping, much to the consternation of President Trump, and then to be a flatterer, a suck up to the crowd at Davos. The speech content itself, again, eloquent, but he's appropriating truths from viewpoints that are outside of the liberal viewpoint that he himself believes in. And then finally, there's a fundamental confusion baked into it where it draws right back to the Enlightenment. And he's appropriating an anti-communist sentiment for himself, whereas liberalism and communism, Marxism, are siblings of the Enlightenment itself. If you enjoyed these comments, please let me know what you think. I would love to respond to them. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You hear it all the time, but it makes a huge, huge difference. It's free to you. You just click the button and say you've subscribed, but it really helps the show. And if you're super interested, I also have a Patreon channel. It's totally free, but I respond to comments and interact with you first. So if there's a comment there on Patreon, I talk with you folks there first and then with people elsewhere. So once again, thanks for dropping by, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.